Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, I'm sure you all know, we are going to be going over the matches from this past weekend, which was the final regular season weekend of Stage 3. So please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we'll just get right into it. The first thing I want to go over is the matches, talk about those from the weekend. There was a pretty crazy sequence of matches, and we'll just start right away with the Thursday matches. Of course, we only had two on Thursday, and the first one was the Minnesota Rocker versus Los Angeles Guerrillas. This one ended up being a pretty darn good match overall. I mean, honestly, Minnesota has been not necessarily on like a slide in terms of the fact that they're not like a horrible team, but they certainly haven't looked as strong as they initially did with Standy, and LAG recently have been looking a lot stronger than they have over the past months of the league, even maybe this entire year. They've been looking a lot stronger, so that made things a lot more interesting. I actually picked this match exactly right. I did pick a 3-2 to the side of Minnesota Rocker because I kind of saw the close match coming, to be honest. LAG, I think they played 3 or 4 game 5s in this stage, in the stage 3, especially since the roster change. They've looked like a team that's always going to play a series relatively close. Don't know that they're necessarily going to get a ton of wins, but they are always going to play it close. And in this series, Standy and Priesta really kind of bullied their way around the map with 1.2s and 1.3s. And on the side of LAG, they just got overall outslayed. Minnesota took the opening hardpoint, then LAG bounced back with a round 11 win. Then Minnesota really rolled through them in the control, and then LAG had a big bounce back on checkmate hardpoint and lost in a round 10 in the final search. Once again, this isn't like takeaway-wise from this series. It's kind of like Minnesota, you know, this is a team you should beat, so it's good that you beat them, but it's kind of scary that it took until a map 5 for them to win it, because once again, I don't think LAG is a bad team by any means. I think they can be competitive with anybody in the league. Once again, don't think they win a lot of those matches, but they're going to be competitive. But for a team like Minnesota, who we're arguing maybe could be a top team that could contend to win events, it's kind of scary that they're that they had to take LAG to a map 5. Then the second match of Thursday, we had New York versus OpTic. This match was kind of disappointing overall from the fact that it was kind of expected to be like a banger match, and it was expected to be a really good one, and it really honestly wasn't all that good. The first hard point we came out, and OpTic Chicago gets 100-point club, 250 to 92. Really, New York just fried, Hydra fried, 29 and 14 in that first hard point. And on the side of OpTic, Scump was really the only one that showed up in terms of kills and deaths. He did have the least damage on the team, but he was the only one positive with a 1.05. On the side of New York, I mean, nobody really played like crazy besides Hydra. I mean, Asim was at exactly a 1, Mac was at a 0.98, Clayster was at a 0.8, and then Hydra had a 1.6 on the series, 93 and 59. Crazy from him. On the side of OpTic, though, it was the same struggles. I banked on picking them because I figured, you know, this team, we've never seen Scump in formal teams, and Envoy and Dashy are certainly talented enough to be players that can dominate and respawn. And we've never seen teams with Scump and Formal on them, or OpTic in general, struggle and respawn for so long. It's always search and destroy, so I figured, you know, they're going to work on it. They've been struggling for long enough. They'll figure out their respawn game, and they'll be just fine, and they come out and get 100-point clubbed. And granted, New York is the best hardpoint team in the game right now. I believe they were 9-0 by the end of Stage 3 here. They were 9-0, I think it was. So, I mean, obviously that's an insane record. They're probably the best hardpoint team in the game, so it's not like OpTic was expected to win these, but still, with players of that caliber, I would expect them to get somewhat close. I mean, they weren't even close. To be honest, and then the search comes up, and New York wins at 6-2. This is what I was trying to get to. New York wins the search 6-2, and it's like, okay, this is how I thought the series was going to go. I thought New York would take the opening hardpoint. I thought OpTic would take the second search. And then I thought the checkmate control, or whatever control they played, was kind of going to be like the toss-up map where whoever wins this probably swings the series, because New York's probably winning both hardpoints, and OpTic would have to win 2-3-5. I believe I talked about that. OpTic would probably have to win 2-3-5. But they only won the checkmate control. The search they got dominated on. They win the control. Then they actually played the Moscow hardpoint game 4 very close, which is why I thought we might have a good match on Sunday with Faze. because New York, like I said, being the best hardpoint team in the game right now, and OpTic seemingly one of the worst. The fact that OpTic lost 250 to 230 and played them very tight, I thought that would bode well for OpTic potentially playing Faze tighter. Maybe they had figured out their hardpoint game a little bit, and obviously we saw later that didn't help to have them play Faze any tighter, but we'll get into that a little later. Moving on from this one, this just proved to me that New York is like the real deal. Obviously, I thought that New York was the real deal, but they had played so limited matches with Hydra that like you don't want to overreact and say like, oh my god, they're a top team. But Hydra definitely is the real deal, and New York looks like the real deal of a team. And this match kind of solidified that, considering that they now beat Faze, and now they've beat Thieves, beat OpTic. I mean, they've beat a lot of top teams. Their only loss being to London, which doesn't look as bad now because London has been better, but still, I mean, they're a better team than London. They should have won that, and then they'd be 5-0. Then moving on to Thursday, the first match was Faze versus Surge. This was kind of another series where it was like probably wasn't going to be very good. Then all of a sudden, the first hardpoint happens, and Seattle wins Apocalypse by 60, and you're like, wait a minute here. Seattle, maybe this roster change did something for them. Maybe they got a chance. And then they just get 6-4 in the Surge, 3-1 in the Control, and they get beat by 100 in the Moscow hardpoint, and they're 3-1. Overall for Seattle, I nobody was positive on the series. Everybody had a .95 or lower. Coming on that first map, Persini fried 21-15. He looked very good. And then from there on out, things just didn't click. Faze, this was an interesting one from them because they started to play some of their good maps again. Like they're undefeated on Checkmate S&D, I believe, in Stage 3. So they started to play some of their good maps and they won. I just think that Apocalypse has almost got to start to be an auto veto for them. For how talented they are, they just can't seem to win that. Clearly they were a lot more talented than Surge, and we saw Surge get dominated by London as well this weekend. So clearly Surge are one of the lower teams on the talent totem pole right now, and obviously we know Faze is one of the highest teams on that talent totem pole. And the fact that they just keep getting beat by random teams on Apocalypse means that it's maybe time to stop widening your map pool up to that and just give up on the fact that Apocalypse might not be one of your maps. But main takeaways from this, Seattle, they looked all right in map 1, but it doesn't seem like this roster change made them any better at all. And Faze, good to see them get a win, but we have more takeaways from their match later in the week. Then the other match on Thursday was Empire Florida. This one kind of shocked me, to be honest. I did think that Florida had a decent chance to win it because Dallas has been struggling, but I didn't necessarily think it'd be in a 3-0. And honestly, the reason that was in a 3-0 to me isn't because Neptune stepped up or Havoc stepped up, or even that Big Wake played like his normal self. It was that Skies stepped up. I know Skies had a crazy series. He went 70 and 46 overall. He had a 1.52. And this is something that we would expect to see out of Skies every once in a while. But the reason I say I believe he's like basically the reason they won or like turned things around and look so good is because we haven't seen that from him this year. We know he's capable of it. Obviously we know Skies is one of the more talented players in the league. We know he has potential to be a top main AR, maybe even the top main AR. He just hasn't looked like it so far this year. Now, granted, Neptune and Havoc have also had consistency issues, and they dropped a 1.09 and a 1.11 respectively. And then Big Wake also had a 1.11, but we expect that out of him this year. But overall, just Skies was a difference maker to me. He went 34 and 25, set the tone in that first hardpoint where they won 230 to 198 on Moscow. It's kind of funny to see a time run out on a hardpoint. We haven't seen that much this year, and that happened like back-to-back days or something. But they won that hardpoint off time, expiring by about 30 points. They won a 6-3 on Express, and they 3-1 Dallas on Checkmate Control, where Skies had his way again with a 1.6, and Big Wake had a 1.8. The ARs of Florida were just firing on all cylinders over Crim and Fellow on the side of Dallas. My main takeaways from this match, honestly, are Florida might finally be coming around to being that team that we thought they could have been in the beginning of the year, where they could be one of the top teams. We're just going to need to see consistency out of Havoc and Neptune. I don't want to overreact, although since Dallas did beat Minnesota fairly handily later in the week, it makes it seem like this Florida W is a little bit better, but don't want to overreact on the side of Florida and say that they're like here to stay. I believe that this was a sign of their potential if Havoc and Neptune can stay consistent. So hopefully they do, because then Florida becomes a very scary team. On the side of Dallas, since they beat Minnesota, it's not a reason to panic. I feel like it's just growing pains within the team. We know a team with Shotzi, Crim, and Illy is going to be right there at the end of the year. They're going to be a top team. They're going to be competing to be the world champs. It's likely that they're going to end up getting another top 4. And Fellow's not a bad player, and we saw later in the week that he can really get it done in search and destroy, but we'll talk about that when we get to that match. And then starting out Friday, I believe, yeah, this was the first match of Friday, or Saturday, I'm sorry. It was Toronto Ultra versus the Paris Legion. This one went about the way you could expect, not too much to talk about here. Toronto 3-0s them. Another hardpoint that ran out of time on Garrison of all maps, kind of a weird map to run out of time, 226 to 210 for Toronto, then a 6-3 search and a 3-1 control. I mean, basically what you'd expect in the series. Insight fried like usual with a 1.4. Bands had his 1.1 that we've become accustomed to recently. Cameo with about a 1.03, and then Kleenex was at a 0.9. Scraps with a 1.1 and Temp with a 1.03. Classic had a horrible series, 0.6. Aqua continues to not play that well following that first month or two of the year where he looked awesome. I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about the series. I kind of want to move on and give more coverage to the other ones because, I mean, Paris is one of the bottom teams right now. Toronto's one of the top. Only takeaway from this series, I mean, Kleenex had a 0.9, which that's, I mean, the story of Kleenex is he struggles a little bit with inconsistency, which is maybe the only weakness of this team is Bance and Kleenex can be inconsistent sometimes. That's like the only weakness you could point out if you're looking for a weakness. But once again, he went 56 and 62 on the series and dropped a 0.9, and part of the reason he dropped a 0.9 is because there wasn't a lot of kills left on the map because his teammates were frying so much. So, I mean, I'm just poking at something to see if there's a possible negative because it's pretty hard to find one for Toronto. But on the side of Paris, they got to figure stuff out. And then in the other match, we saw New York versus LA Thieves. Pretty much a fryer again from Kenny. He went 91-77 on the series, 1.18. Everybody else on his team, though, Hook was the next highest with a 0.9. On the side of New York, Mac with a 1.3, Hydra with a 1.1. Overall, they looked pretty damn good. I mean, there was a couple moments there. The opening hardpoint, they get 100-point clubbed. Obviously, not a lot of good moments there. They lose around 11 in the search, which really probably should have gone their way. And then they lose that, or they win the raid control 3-2. That was where we kind of saw the flashes of a team that could have some potential with Hook. I mean, Hook had that crazy play. He was sitting in that corner under like Wheelbarrow and Money in the B control point on raid. I think you know where I'm all talking about, where you can barely see his head maybe from Money. It's like a really OP corner, honestly, because you have to kind of jump into his line of sight in order to actually kill him, unless you're in like top bedroom window or something, or over on that side. And he like Clay was flanking under bedroom and was on that nasty heady that's pretty hard to even rip somebody off with an AR from long range. And I'm assuming Clay had an AR in his hands because he always does. And he challenged Hook, and Hook ripped him off of it with a sub, like cross map from like bottom wheel to bottom bedroom, and then he like whipped around onto like top wheelbarrow, the top overlook, and he turned on I don't even know who it was. I believe it was Mac, but I'm not 100% sure. And it was like a crazy two-piece, and that got them the momentum. They won that control. And then they actually fought really hard in the second hard point. This kind of seems like, I really wish we would have had another match to watch Thieves on the weekend, because it feels like they were just a new team that was kind of nervous to play together, and they lost those first two maps. Then all of a sudden the control woke them up, and then they were playing the best hardpoint team in the game in New York and brought them to 250 to 220 map on raid and played it really close. So it almost feels like it was just like a slow start for Thieves, and it took them a little bit to wake up. So I wish we would have been able to see them in one more match on the weekend to get more of a hold of what they are. But honestly, the takeaway for me is Thieves might start slow, but they showed enough talent to make me believe that they're probably going to end up being a top team come the end of the year. And New York, once again, they're one of the favorites to win the major. To come out and beat a team down like this, I mean, 100-point club a team like this, and really handle them they handled them in that first search, and to be able to clutch up and win a search, or in the first hardpoint, I'm sorry, and then to be able to clutch up and win a search and destroy. And New York is a team that we haven't seen play all that well in search and destroy really throughout the year, and even throughout this stage. I mean, they're 4-3 in search and destroy, so they're not like horrible, but they're not great. So to see them win a search and destroy against a team like Thieves, who I believe is a very good search and destroy team in general, maybe more with TJ than with Hook, but still a pretty good search and destroy team, it's good. Then the final match of Friday, we saw Florida versus LAG. Another interesting series, because once again, if you look at the overall series statistics, the KDs, everybody on the side of LAG was negative. Pretty much everybody on the side of Florida was positive except for Neptune. But it still went 3-2. Florida took the opening hardpoint, then lost the search in around 11. Then they take the control, get smoked in the fourth hardpoint, 250 to 139, and then win the final search and destroy. This was, I mean, once again, I don't want to take too much time on this because we've talked about both these teams. But I mean, we see Skies have another really good series with a 1.26. Neptune, not a bad one with a 0.96. Big Wake had a 1.1. The big thing for me was Havoc once again. I believe he had a 1.11 in that first series, I said, and he also had a 1.11 here. We've talked about the big thing for him is consistency, and he showed some consistency here, which is huge. So my main takeaways are, once again, we had 2 good series out of Havoc, and really 2 good series out of Neptune in general, and 2 out of Skies, the 3 players who have been up and down for them. I mean, Havoc hasn't played as long, but he's been up and down since he's been in. The 3 players who have been up and down all were up all week, so that gives me some faith in Florida possibly turning things around. Also, it's good to see them play a Game 5, because we'd never see them play a Game 5 all year, and the fact they were able to clutch up and win it, especially after losing a Map 4, where you're kind of nervous that you're going to blow that 2-1 series lead. It was awesome to see them clutch up and win a Map 5. For LAG, it's the same thing. They're such a good structured team that they're always going to keep themselves in series. It would just be nice to see them be able to clutch up and ice up a Game 5, because they've been in so many that they lost. I do have faith that if they force a lot of Game 5s, they could get hot and feel clutch on the right weekend, and there's a chance they can make a little bit of a run, because they're a bunch of veteran players that, I mean, they're going to a lot of round 10, rounds 11s. That's just like those 1 rounds. Sometimes they're not going to go your way regardless of how good you're playing, and sometimes they're all going to go your way, and they just need them to all go their way on one weekend, and who knows, they could make a run in a major here coming up. Then moving on to Saturday, I kind of want to get through these relatively quickly because I don't want to make this video take forever. We still got some hot takes and stuff to get into, so be sure to stick around for those and comment on those later in the video. But the next series we're getting into is the Sunday matches, London versus Seattle. Once again, there's not a whole lot to talk about with this series because London just kind of fried, if we're being honest. The fact that it's a 6-1 is just kind of a fluke as to the skill level of the players, because the hardpoint should have been a 100-point club for London in the first Moscow, and then they get beat 6-2 on Express Search. They win the Control 3-2, and then they 250-75 them on Apocalypse in the last map, and then London won 3-1. I mean, on the series, Shawnee had a, what did he have? He had a 1.15, a couple 1.12s for Paul and Zap, and a 1.1 for Zed. On the side of Surge, only positive player was Octane with a 1.05. Pristini got fried this series. He was a 0.63. Decimate and Gunless weren't horrible. They both went 63 and 65 on the series exactly. Main takeaways from this one, I don't want to overreact and say London is like some like god tier team now, because I mean they beat Seattle, who's got a new roster and looks to be one of the worst teams in the league and not the worst. So you don't want to overreact and say London is some like godly team now, but they certainly are improving, and I'm excited to see that because I want to see all the teams at least be competitive in every match. You don't want to have some matches that you're going into and it's like, well, this is a freebie. Especially because I think that the losers bracket matches become very interesting because London seems to be hot and Paris is a team that can turn it up and beat anybody at any time, or they can be the worst team in the league. And then LAG is a team who we see always lose Game 5s, but they're playing Seattle who's struggling. So it's like we have a lot of teams that we like are trying to find out their identity right now because they're so hot and cold, and it'll be fun to see them all play because I truly believe we have the actual bottom 4 playing in the first round of losers, which is good because you don't want to see some team who's actually really good and had a bad stage down there. But we actually truly have the bottom 4 down there. But back to this series, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Surge are pretty good at Search and Destroy, this would have been an embarrassing 3-0 because the first hardpoint was horrible, and then they choked the Control bad. They had like a 2-1 lead, and they just choked 2 straight rounds to London. But on the side of Surge, I don't know if the Decimate move is the way. I don't know what's wrong with the roster. They might need to just complete overhaul. And on the side of London, I hope to see them keep improving, to be honest. Then that second match of Sunday, the one that I was really looking forward to because I was hoping, I tweeted about it, I was hoping OpTic would be up 2-0 or 2-1. Not because I wanted them to win or anything, but because I wanted to, it was like OpTic had to win 3-0 or 3-1, and if they did, that meant that they were in winner's bracket. I believe if they were like 3-0, they would have been second. If they were 3-1, they would have been in third, but still in winner's bracket. And then if they win 3-2 or lost, they would have been in fourth place and in the loser's bracket. So I wanted to see OpTic up like 2-0, and then Faze win that map to go 2-1, and then see a map 4 hardpoint, because it would have been really interesting to see, like, that map would have literally been for winner's bracket. It would have been like an elimination match, which makes things a lot more exciting when you're watching basically elimination matches. But unfortunately, OpTic like got smoked off the stage. I mean, when you look at the kills and deaths from the series, it looks like they only played one map because there were so little kills and deaths. I mean, like, the highest kill player in the lobby was 47 with Cellium, which is like crazy to think. I mean, on the side of Faze, Arcitys at a 1.5, Abezy at a 1.5, Cellium at a 1.7, Simp at a 1.3. I mean, on the side of OpTic, we had Scump with a 0.7, Form with a 0.9, Dash with a 0.6, and Envoy with like a 0.47. I know we had the whole server controversy and stuff, so we'll touch on that a little bit, because honestly, I don't think there's that many more takeaways from this series. I necessarily don't believe that the server issue with the server being Atlanta and then basically having quad hosts, I don't think that's the only reason they won the series. Obviously, they're a super good team. They're better than OpTic right now, and that's the reason they won it, but I do think it certainly played a factor. I understand that Simp, Abezy, Arcitys, Cellium, these are 4 of the best players in the world. But Scump, Formal, Envoy, and Dashy are not some slouch players. They're 4 of the other best players in the world. I mean, these are all top 20 players in the world. I mean, granted, maybe Dashy isn't having the greatest year, but I mean, I don't think any of you, even if you're a hater of Dashy or you love Dashy or you don't really care about him, I don't think anybody can argue that he's not one of the most talented players we've seen. He's got crazy talent regardless of how he's playing. So I do think maybe there was something up with the ping really helped Faze in a way. Once again, I still think Faze probably wins this 3-0, 3-1, regardless of there being Atlanta servers or not. But I do think that players of Scump, Formal, Envoy, and Dashy's caliber, there had to be something a little up with the servers because they don't get fried like this, like ever. We never see them get fried this bad. Now, once again, Arcitys, Abezy, Cellium, and Simp, they may be better players than them, but they don't get fried like that. But once again, the takeaways, I mean, servers or not, there's still takeaways. Regardless of what their connection was, Faze looked structured on the map. They were dominating. It was good to see them have some confidence again and play the maps they're good at, because we haven't seen them play their maps that they're really good at in a while. They've been trying to widen their map pool. And then for the side of OpTic, once again, I don't necessarily think they're as bad as this series show, because that'd mean they're really like the worst team in the league. But I do think it's concerning that they continue to just get dominated off the map and respawn. So once again, I don't know how much I want to take away from this because of the whole server thing, but it is alarming that that Faze looks so good and OpTic looks so bad. That's really what I want to say from it, because it's hard to know how much the servers affected it because we just don't know. I mean, I don't think it necessarily, some people are saying, oh, OpTic wins if the servers are better, but those are probably OpTic fans that are just upset, understandably, that their team lost, because it sucks. Well, I mean, why would you be happy that your team lost? But I don't necessarily think, I don't want to overreact. I don't want to say Faze is the best team and they're going to beat Toronto, and I don't want to say OpTic is horrible because of one series where there's server questions. I'll just say that OpTic has a lot of work to do before the major, and Faze, if they continue to get these maps in their map pool, if they continue to allow these maps that they're good at to get through into series, they're going to be scary, and they have a very good chance to possibly steal this major from Toronto. Then the final match of the weekend, we saw Empire versus Minnesota, and this one was actually shocking to me. I mean, some of my predictions I got wrong. It's not like I was shocked because a lot of them were kind of 50-50s, like I said in the predictions video. This one I got wrong, and I was actually a little surprised, especially with the way Empire looked earlier in the week. They looked so bad, and Minnesota was coming off a win versus LAG. Granted, it was only a 3-2. But in this series, I mean, on the side of Minnesota, the statistics don't look that bad. I mean, Attach at a 1.2. I mean, everybody else was positive, but accuracy with a 0.8, he really struggled. And then on the side of Empire, it's kind of the same thing. Their main AR, Krim, also had a 0.8, but everybody else was around a 1. Overall, it looks like on the series, honestly, Minnesota outslayed Dallas, but they lost 250 to 232 in that first hard point. It went the way of Dallas Empire, and then in that Miami search, they won 6-4. Minnesota was able to sneak out that control 3-2 on raid, and then Empire closed it on the Apocalypse. But the big thing in that search, Tyler Felony, he went 11-6 in the search and destroy, and then that final hard point, he went 20-18. Overall, he played really well. He went 22-22 in the first hard point. This one is kind of what I've been saying about Minnesota all year. A lot of you guys on Twitter and stuff have been telling me that I was low on Minnesota, and like a lot of comments say like Minnesota should be up there. But it's the same thing I felt about Minnesota all year. I think they're very good, and on any given day can beat any team. And if it just so happens that one weekend they get hot, I think they could win an event. But the issue with Minnesota is this: they have such consistency issues. Like, they're dominating Dallas all year. They pretty much beat them every time they play them. They look so good. The first week with Standy, they look amazing. They smoke OpTic in that hard point, and they 3-0 them, I believe, in that regular season match. And then all of a sudden they just start to look kind of bad. And they're just so hot and cold that it's hard to pick them for a whole tournament to win it, or to like win matches consistently, because they're just so up and down, and it's like we can't rely on them to be consistent. On the side of Dallas, this was a big match for them. It feels like they maybe found their footing as a team with the new roster, so I'm excited to see them going forward. But I believe that's going to do it for the matches we wanted to cover. I was able to pretty much catch every match, but maybe a couple maps of a few, so that was kind of nice to see. Granted, since I haven't been able to do that really in the last couple weeks because I've been so busy. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for covering the matches. We're going to move on to the power rankings and then into the hot or not section. But first, we'll go with power rankings. We'll go bottom to top like we normally do. At 12, I think maybe making their first appearance at 12 is the Seattle Surge. This is usually London's spot, but they're finally improving, so we got to move them up. But Surge are in 12 because they made a roster change and they look worse. They got dominated twice this week, so it's hard to put them any higher than that. They seem to have the lowest ceiling right now. At 11, I have Paris Legion. This pains me because they've kind of been a team I've been rooting for a little bit this year, but their ceiling seems low. It seems like they can't really win many matches right now, so they have to be at 11. At 10 is LAG. This is kind of, we know who 9, 10, 11, and 12 are. It's London, LAG, Paris, and Seattle. I believe Paris and Seattle have to be 11 and 12, but I believe 9 and 10 is the spot where you can kind of switch LAG or Royal Ravens depending on who you have more faith in. To me, it seems that LAG are the more safe team because I think they're going to consistently stay in every series and keep it close. But London are more the hot pick. That's why I put them at 9 and LAG at 10 because London, I think they have more likelihood of laying a complete dud than LAG, but I also think they have more likelihood to pull off a big upset than LAG. So I put them at 9. Then at 8, also kind of a no-brainer to me, it's Florida. I can see maybe the argument for putting them ahead of teams like Minnesota and OpTic, but the reason I have them at 8 is because, once again, still Minnesota and OpTic. Besides these last few weeks, we've seen them be pretty good all year, and Florida has been pretty bad all year except for the last 2 weeks, so I don't want to just overreact and start jumping them into the top 6. But if we see a good performance from them at the major, and we potentially see OpTic and Minnesota bow out early, then maybe we'll talk about moving them up into that top 7 that's been pretty much impossible to crack for the last few weeks. The top 7's been consistent for almost the whole year, actually. Then at 7, we've got Minnesota. To me, 6 and 7 have to be Minnesota and OpTic, and you can put them in whatever order you want. The thing for me is still with both of them struggling with both of them struggling so much, we got OpTic struggling a lot in respawn, Minnesota just struggling overall with consistency. The reason I go OpTic 6 and then Minnesota 7 is because, once again, the players on OpTic, I just have more faith for them to turn it around, especially come tournament time. They kind of have a tournament switch they can flip because these players have been playing for a while, especially T2B, they've been playing forever. I just have more of a feeling that they can turn it on in a tournament setting, which is why I have them 1 ahead of Minnesota going into the tournament. Once again, you could flip them. If you have more faith in Minnesota, you flip them. Then at 5, I've got Thieves. I feel like this is one, once again, 4 and 5 is kind of the same block. I feel like we're going in blocks of 2 here with the teams because at 12 and 11, you've got the 2 worst teams clearly. Paris and Seattle, put them in whatever order you want. Then at 9 and 10, we've got the 2 teams who are towards the bottom but are showing signs of life, London and LAG, so you put them there. Then at 8, you kind of got them on their own. They're a team that was at the bottom but is now climbing, but we kind of got to keep them there because we need to see more consistency, and that's Florida. And then at 6 and 7, you've kind of got your block where it's the 2 teams that have been top teams but are struggling, in OpTic and Minnesota. Then at 4 5, you got Empire and Thieves, the 2 teams that are climbing, but we still need to see a little more from them. A little more consistency. That's the reason I have Thieves at 5 is because I do think they're going to be really good, and I think by the end of the year they'll be very good. It's just the simple fact that they have a brand new roster, so it might be too early for them to win a major, given the fact that they still have to figure things out as a team. And then at 4, Dallas Empire. I can't put them any higher than 4 because we saw them get 3-0 by Florida this week, so that's kind of a sign that they're still figuring things out, but it seemed by the end of the week, beating Minnesota 3-1, it seems like they're starting to figure things out, so they're at 4. And then New York is at 3. I think this one's pretty clear, too. I think your 3, 2, 1 have to be the same pretty much across the board. New York looks extremely hot right now, and you can make an argument that they might be the second best team in the game and potentially could win this event. But Atlanta, the way they looked against OpTic, and they're still Atlanta, they have to go 2, and Toronto have to go 1 because they're coming off the win and they went 5-0. That 1, 2, 3 is pretty self-explanatory for me. Toronto's coming off a win. They're undefeated in this stage. They only dropped 1 map. So they've got to be number 1. Faze, they looked insanely good against OpTic, but it's hard to put them at number 1 considering Toronto still hasn't lost since they won the major. And then New York is that red-hot team. That's kind of our dark horse for the next major, so that 3. I actually think those power rankings are honestly a bit easier to do than they have been. Because we have like a few top teams struggling, like I said, in Chicago and Minnesota, so they had to drop. Then teams like New York, LA Thieves, Dallas seem to be climbing and figuring things out, so they kind of have to be towards the top. Honestly, I'm pretty much overall pretty happy with those. I thought they were one of the easier ones to do on the year because everybody kind of had their exact area they had to go. Now let's get into the hot or not section. You know how this works. Comment down below if you think each take I offer is hot, meaning you agree, or why it's not, meaning you disagree with it. We only have 2 this time, and then something else I wanted to address. So the first one is on OpTic. And it basically goes like this. They need to find a way to have a more established voice in the comms to direct the troops, as well as hiring more analysts or coaches. This isn't a shot at the players or sender at all. The players have all won before, and they're some of the best to ever do it. They know what they're doing in game. It's not like they need somebody to direct them, to tell them what to do. However, though, it doesn't mean it doesn't make it easier. Before this team, all of the teams that these guys had been on had other people that had more of an IGL role that they didn't have to worry about. Scump and Formal always had Crim during the Dynasty to be more of their vocal leader, and even Karma. And then Dashy and Crim, or Dashy always had Crim on his OpTic team. I mean, he didn't really have any super notable teams before that than last year. If you want to consider his MW team at all, he had a guy like Slasher, and even JCap earlier in the year to direct things around. And then Envoy, even on his Gen G team, had a guy like Mox who's very vocal. And then even the Huntsman team last year, where Envoy, Scump, and Formal were on, they had Arcitys as the voice to lead things in game. And Envoy can try to do it as much as he wants, but it's extremely hard to be the route man, or whatever you want to call what he does, where he's flanking and kind of making plays separate from the team, while also telling your team how to set up when you aren't near them and you can't exactly see their arrows on the minimap and what things are going down. So that's a really hard role for him to kind of take on. I feel like they really just need to sit down and have deep talks about, how they want to play the game, how they want to communicate their in-game and setup. And they obviously have the talent to win tournaments. We know this. It's just that things aren't clicking. And even all these other top teams like Faze with Easy Mac, I believe Toronto has them. I know New York has them with JP in them. Like all these other top teams have multiple coaches, and even Faze. Not only do they have their analysts Easy Mac, but they also have Crowder and RJ as coaches, and then they hired Tupac as like a search and destroy guy. It's like, I don't know. I think they just need to hire more analysts and coaches in general, just to get more eyes on things and have more stats for them, because it seems like they're just on the back foot where everybody else has all these resources for them and they just don't have any resources. So yeah, do you think they need to hire more coaches and analysts to help fix problems? Then the second and last take, LA Thieves might flop in the short term, but come champs time, they're probably going to be right up at the top 4, maybe competing in the finals. And I said in the previous vid, when reacting to the Hook news, that I'm not sure that they're going to be super good in the short term as they figure things out, but in the long term, they're going to be awesome. They didn't look horrible necessarily against New York this week, but they certainly looked like they needed to iron some stuff out, and they were a new team. So my take is essentially that there's a good chance LA Thieves bows out of this major, maybe like top 6 or something, especially because they play a hot Florida team first, and then if they win that, they play New York. So there's like a good chance they bow out of this major top 6 or something, but still grind it out as is and come out fighting for top 4 champs time probably. So essentially the take is I think it'll take a little bit of time, but they're going to reach a top tier form just slower than some people may have thought, and it may not look that good this major. And the last thing I wanted to touch on isn't a hot take or hot or not section or anything. It's just something I heard on the flank. Zoom in methods were talking about it, and I wanted to touch on it. They were talking about the LAN coming in stage 4 and stuff, and it kind of worried me a bit. They were saying like how every team had to bring subs and stuff in case of COVID cases within the team, and making players unable to attend the event and stuff. And obviously this makes sense and is necessary. They have to do a ton of precautions and stuff. But I'm worried about what happens if this situation comes up. Obviously, we don't want any players to get COVID or anything. That's the main concern. But also competition-wise, I really hope it doesn't happen. I don't want to see some team, like let's say Dallas or something, makes the finals, and they're playing Faze or Ultra, and then we have a few positive cases on one of those teams. Then like Dallas gets like a free win or something because the other team isn't at full strength. Or, I mean, even worse, if the team had to forfeit because of it or something. I don't think anybody, if I'm in any competition, I don't want to win because the other team wasn't at full strength or they had to forfeit. It doesn't really feel like a real win. And obviously that sucks for the team that has to put in subs or doesn't have their full team or even has to forfeit or something. That sucks. You don't want to see that. I clearly want land back, and that's a risk of it. But I just want to say I hope the players just take things seriously and are extremely careful to not expose themselves to things for both health reasons, obviously, and also competition reasons. But I believe that is going to do it for this one. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll likely be back tomorrow or Wednesday for the predictions for the Stage 3 Major. But thanks for watching, and have a great day, everyone.